Okay, so kind of a big question, but what was your role in this investigation?
I was the on-call detective the weekend or that she went missing, and I was called in to assist patrol with locating a missing person. At that point, I know it was a Sunday. I was at home mowing my lawn. My lieutenant called me, asked me to come in, and I met with patrol. They passed me a file of everything that they had done up to that point. And then I began looking for Ying Ying.
So when the whole command post was set up here and everything, what was that like?
Well, that wasn't until the next day, but as things progressed, once we discovered information regarding her getting into a car, it went from a missing person to a kidnapping case. And then I notified my lieutenant, who basically advised me he was going to bring in additional resources. So then, within a day, we had several officers from various agencies meeting here. We set up a command post. The FBI met with us, and we basically created a war room where we assigned tasks and went after leads, followed up on them, reported back, and just developed a case that way. It went from our department initially to the FBI playing a lead closely, being assisted by U of I and all of our assets.
Sure. So you and Special Agent Megan Arrow were in that room interviewing Christensen. How did he act? What were his facial expressions?
He was very nonchalant initially in the beginning, kind of like, well, why am I here? I just want to help. It's terrible what happened type demeanor. He basically showed no emotion. But as the interview progressed, there was clear indicators of stress on him, where you could tell that he had realized that we knew that he had picked her up.
Yeah, so during the interview, you were pressing him, trying to get more information. At what point did you know he did it?
Well, I had a strong feeling that he did it after the discovery of that he was the owner of the car that had the broken hubcap, because now I wanted him to tell me that he picked up a female. And then once he admitted that he picked up an Asian female, then I knew it was him, without a doubt.
Were you surprised that he admitted that?
No, because in his mind, I gave him an out during the interview. I made it clear to him by giving him bits of details that only he would know, that I'd seen from the bits and pieces of video footage that we had. You know, when I told him that I saw her look into your window, what did she say? She was late for a meeting. Where did you take her? Those kind of questions. And I knew that would plant the seed in his mind that, oh, they actually have video of me. Now, he doesn't know how much video we have, because he was there to find out what the police knew at that time. It was a fishing exercise for him. And I could tell by his body language and his demeanor that he realized, oh, he's not in control here, we're in control, and that we actually have him. So then he quickly shifted to, I gave him an out by saying, are you scared to tell us that you picked her up because she went missing? Is that why you're afraid to tell us, type thing? But I know that you picked her up, as we talked, and I'd give him little bits of truth from the video that only he would know. So then in his mind, his only strategy is to say, well, yeah, they know that I picked her up, so now I gotta deflect and distance myself from her. And this is my theory. And then he comes up with the story about how he let her out in a residential neighborhood shortly after picking her up. Because see, then that distances himself away from the actual end result, which was her being murdered.
Sure. So we know by now that at that time he had been looking up search updates for Ying Ying on your website, on UIPD's website. You testified that you didn't know that at the time.
Correct.
If you had known that, would your line of questioning been different?
Regarding his web searches?
Regarding, we know you've been looking stuff up about.
I could have used that against him. Sure. I don't know that. Like my strategy, everybody has a little different strategy in an interrogation, and Tony and I both agree that when you go into an interview, you want to build. It goes through stages. You want to build rapport with that person, and you want to have a conversation with them. But while you're doing that, you're building a timeline, and you get them locked into a timeline, and then you go back on different details of that timeline that they either made up or left out. And in his particular case, he kept denying that he picked her up. He kept saying, no, I was at home all day. I was just playing video games. And that was where the classic line is like, we didn't bring you up here to talk about video games during the interview. Well, that was me.
For lunch that day.
Yeah, I'm setting context with them, basically saying, listen, we know that you picked her up. We just want to know why you picked her up. And so was I trying to play good cop, bad cop? No. But I was trying to set context with him, and I was addressing his denials and saying we're not going to just spin our tires here. We're going to move forward in this interview, and part of moving forward is to him to be honest with me and tell me that he picked her up, which he did.
That's what I was kind of wondering. It kind of seemed like Anthony was playing good cop almost, and you were playing bad cop at times. Is that even a thing?
No, I think that's people watching the movies. But there comes a time, and like I don't really know. I just met Tony a couple days before that interview, so I don't know. How he is in most interviews, but generally in law enforcement, as you're doing an interview, you go through these stages, and it's a process, and you have to, and it's a way to develop a relationship with that person that you're interviewing, so that they feel comfortable sharing stuff with you, and it's just happened to be at a point where, I think Tony had ran out of questions, and that was where I kind of came up. Now I don't know if that's the case. I never asked him, did you run out of questions? The timing felt right for me to inject, so I did. And it could have ended badly. He could have been like, you know what, I don't like your attitude. I'm done talking here. I want an attorney. It was risky,
yeah.
But,
So like as far as interviews go with suspects or subjects who end up being guilty or at least convicted, was there anything that was unusual about that, or is that kind of par for the course for that kind of thing? I guess were you surprised by how much he ended up admitting or telling you, considering what he had just done?
Well, at that time, you mean after the fact, once I learned everything he had done?
Looking at it, hindsight 2020.
Yeah, I don't know why. I think he was trying to outsmart the police, and during that interview, I planted the seed in his mind, like, you've been a student here for how long? And I was basically saying, well, what do we have all over campus? Well, I was trying to basically make him recall cameras, because one thing students see here all the time is they see cameras every building they go into. And everybody thinks we have cameras at every intersection on campus and stuff like that. So I was using that fear of the camera, that we had cameras on. I was planting that seed. So had I not had that angle or to work with him, he could have said, no, I never left my apartment. I had to give him something. It's a give and take. He was maintaining that denial that he never left his apartment. So then I gave him something that I had that I didn't want to share. And I said, I know that you picked her up, because I basically told him I saw you drive up to her and I saw her get in her car. Well, and then in his mind he's thinking, well, they must have video. So then he wants to see all the video. I'm like, I didn't bring you up here to show you video. I'm asking the questions. You're going to give me the answers, because I knew at that point he's lying to me from the very beginning, to both Tony and I. And he had lied to agents before that when they initially spoke to him. So, that's the denial phase of the interview. And so I'm attacking that denial, and I'm not letting him come down from it. But I gave him an out, because I didn't want him to get backed in a corner and just be like, you know what, I'm done talking to you, And so I said, well, why didn't you tell him that you picked her up? I gave him that. Is it because you're afraid, because the girl you picked up and dropped off to sign a lease went missing? That's why you don't want to tell us you picked her up? Because maybe he did. Here's one theory. He could have picked her up, and he could have taken her to that lease agency and dropped her off. And that was his time frame that he dealt with Ying Ying. And she could have went missing after she signed that lease. But that's not how the timeline played out, and he knew that because she never got from point A to point B. So then in his mind, he's like, well, now how do I get her out of my car? Well, and then he invents this scenario where they're arguing, there's a language barrier, she's crazy, I can't remember his exact verbiage, that she was yelling at him, so he stops and she gets out. Well, we know that didn't happen, but I let him have that during the interview to keep him talking. Because later on in the interview, I'm really appealing towards his humanity. I want him to tell me what happened. I don't know what happened. I don't know what his fetishes are. I don't know what his internet searches are. There's a lot of times people, when they're engaged in stuff like this, something bad happens or somebody ends up getting hurt, in this case dying. So, but I never thought it was this extensive, of what he was into and what he did.
Sure. So if we go back to what you were aware of just that night of the interview, if you knew in your heart that this was the guy, that he did it, how hard was it to see him go free for the next 2.5 weeks?
Well, I knew he wasn't in jail, but I knew that we were watching him. So it was not that hard because it was a strategy and technique. I knew that he was being surveyed, and he wasn't going to hurt anybody. And he may give us some leads that we didn't know about. Maybe he's going to go to where her body is, or take us to another location where a kill site was, or something of that nature. There's all kinds of potential to develop leads by giving him that freedom. So I thought it was a good strategy. I don't know if that was the intention, but
Sure.
I didn't make those decisions. But me personally, I was like, this is genius, because now maybe he's going to lead us to where he took her.
So going to a different part of the investigation, and I don't know whether you were involved with this or not. The question that we've been getting from viewers the most is, now that we know what happened to Ying Ying, anyway, now that we have the full picture, which didn't come out in the investigation but came out afterwards through conversations with the attorneys. The question is, why didn't they look in the dumpsters? You guys looked in the dumpsters, right?
I didn't personally, but people did.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had cadaver dogs that walked around the entire complex. We checked. It's a general spiral technique where you start on site and you just spiral outwards and you go, and how far out they went. But we had hundreds of agents and officers going all over the place, following up on leads. Now, had somebody checked the dumpster the night he put the bags in there, but we didn't even know, so by the time there was, we had checked dumpsters, the garbage was, everything had been removed, so it was gone. But I did not personally check the dumpster.
Not
No.
you personally,
No.
but just the whole scope of this investigation.
Mm-hmm.
I heard a little bit about, what it was like in court,
Mm-hmm.
but just if somebody asks you, how big of an investigation was this? How do you describe it? What do you tell them?
It's the largest investigation I've ever been affiliated with in my entire career, whether it's in the military or in civilian law enforcement. The amount of agencies and resources and assets that were involved. We had the huge amount of support from the Chancellor's office and the University of Illinois, providing us with anything that we needed. There was so much digital data, and we needed all these different portable hard drives to store digital evidence and things of that nature. And the Chancellor's office just opened up the checkbook and helped us out.
Yeah. How much data was there?
I can't even quantify it. I mean, it's just, if you think about it, like, we sent people out, when we were trying to figure out the route he took to get home, we sent agents out to private residences that have cameras where they gave us their video. We went to hotels and gas stations and ATMs, any place that would have a camera pointed on a street where we thought he was going. We were taking that video evidence to have it reviewed. So, I mean, there was, And not to mention like all the, like we have over 2,000 cameras here, so, and he was driving around campus, and we were trying to figure out, okay, what parts of campus that we know he was at, what are all the cameras that we have there, and we got to gather all that data and then document it. And I mean, it was an unbelievable amount of work hours, and then I couldn't even quantify how much data that is, but it was significant.
Sure. I don't know that I have any other questions.
Oh, okay.
Unless there's anything else that you want to talk about or that you think is important to mention here. No?
Well, I think what really helped this case, and I think a lot of people have focused on it already, but the cooperation between the various agencies and the relationship that specifically our department has with Champaign Police Department, Urbana Police Department, the FBI, Champaign County. I mean, all of our agencies in this county, we all work together, we share information, and when a critical incident like this arises, everybody pulls their resources together and helps. And it was a well-oiled machine. Like, this rarely happens with all these agencies working together. And I mean, you don't go to training where everybody comes together, and everything just fell into place and worked out really well. So it's how the system is supposed to work.
So yeah. So even though there obviously wasn't a happy ending in this case,
No.
This is how an investigation is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Got it.